Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All Things Middle-earth here with a video on some quality of life things that we desperately need in the game. These are off of my experiences, most of them my experiences in Season 6. This also probably comes from more of a leadership perspective in terms of leading or being an officer in a group, but some of them are just very general needed quality of life for the game. So let me know what you think down below if these are on point or not. And again, as always, the hope is that we get some attention on some of these things, and maybe if we're lucky, even one of them gets implemented soon. All right, so like I said, most of these are based off my experience in Season 6. So the first thing is going to be with the members list and the Kingdom Affair list. If you're not familiar with it, if you go to your Kingdom page, which replaces the Fellowship button here, you click Kingdom Affairs, you can see which different fellowships are in your kingdom, as well as you can go into the Kingdom Diplomacy page here, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And with those groups that are in your kingdom, in your alliance, you can also go to the member list and see the different groups that are in here and all of the members, officers, that kind of stuff. So you just know who to get in contact with. You can tell where certain people are. I think it's just a very nice thing, and I think it should be added, even if kingdoms don't continue in this game, which I'm a little bit split on whether or not they should if things change in it. But let's say we just go back to United Factions, or there is some kind of just different alliance mechanic in the future. I think there should always be this kind of view to look at the different groups you have, look at, who the different leaders are, look at who the officers are. It makes it very easy and very clean. Instead of someone messaging you and saying, hey, I'm in Sons and I'm the officer doing this or whatever, it'd be very nice if you can just confirm those things without worrying, because people do pull some funny business sometimes. So I think a alliance membership list like we have here needs to be implemented in any game mode that it would be applicable to, which I think could be all of them depending on how mechanics work moving forward. And to take it a step further on that same note, in terms of, if you click on the Kingdom Diplomacy page, we can look, there's only one other kingdom. There's only about 10 active or really active fellowships. So there's one other kingdom, and our king can click to choose their attitude and our attitude and kind of let the members know what's going on. I think this is a super cool feature, and I think this needs to be implemented in every single game mode as well. You should be able to do this for every fellowship in the game, because the reality is there are a lot of other fellowships that aren't in kingdoms and probably won't be able to form kingdoms. Now, this is going to also kind of go into another point, but if we look at the rankings, you can see the top 10 are all in one. There aren't enough members in this server to really house more than 2 kingdoms, which is, I think, a flaw in this game mode. And I think just reducing the kingdom, max capacity would solve that. But there are some of these groups, 3 or 4 of them that are active enough that we do need to address them, or we need to know. We have members asking, hey, what do we do? I had this person in this 14th spot attacking me. How do we proceed? And so we could let them know in the Kingdom Affairs page that these groups are neutral, these groups are hostile, these groups are friendly, whatever it may be. I think it should be available in more areas than just one kingdom versus another. Again, if the kingdom cap was released, which really that's the next point, so let's just move on. The next point is just reducing the kingdom cap. I think to 300 makes the most sense to me. It's a little bit more than just uniting 2 groups, 2 fellowships. But I think changing the kingdom cap to 300 would allow for there to be probably in our group 4 different kingdoms. And so then you could actually get some more use out of a page like this, which I think would be very, very interesting. Because again, as you can see in our server, so far it's looking very, very balanced, which I'm very excited about. Again, about half and half. We have some more regions that have been taken over here, but they're maybe spread a little bit wider in the middle. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But in terms of power production, they have the top one, then we have the next slots, and then they have the next ones here. Once you get into these points, I mean, obviously you can see 1.1, 1.1, 1, 1.3. A lot of these guys are pretty close, so I don't look at this for everything. But I will say if the cap was 3, we'd probably have some of these groups being able to be brought into the fold, an 11th and 12th group. And who knows, maybe there would even be another group that could form. If they wouldn't be as powerful, at least they could work on something. They could try and get a ring. And amongst the chaos of other kingdoms, maybe they could have some luck. I don't know. But I definitely think the kingdom cap should be reduced to allow for there to be more kingdoms. Because the way it is now, we do not have enough players in servers to house enough kingdoms for the diplomacy page to really be used. Another quality of life thing that I absolutely think we need is in this same note, we're talking a lot about kingdoms and how those mechanic works and what things in the kingdom feature could be brought to just every season of the game. Just like we talked about how you can see different groups, leaders and officers, I think we need different, more specific officer tags in the game. So again, right now, the only one that can mess with the kingdom diplomacy is the king. I think you should be able to appoint diplomats to do this, and they can be the ones that are going through and adjusting who in what relationship I'm with different fellowships or factions or whatever you want to call it. I think having diplomats as an officer tag, I think having some kind of a war general tag where there could be a separate section called the war room or whatever, war council, and same thing, different plans could be plotted out in different areas. I just think adding some more functionality instead of just having one leader and 4 officers, adding some customization. So for those that want to play around a bit more and get a bit more structured or organized, they have some areas to do that, similar to this diplomacy part here. So I think some named officer positions would be very, very helpful. Another point on leadership or just fellowships in general, right now, to step down from a group, it takes 12 hours to resign your position. And with there being so much power with the leader of a group and then the rest really not being able to do, I mean, they can do pins and things like that, but other than doing pins in game, there's not a whole lot officers can do. So like promoting other officers or different things. I mean, you can kick members that are just members, but promoting or cycling around other officers or whatever it may be, it's a little bit limited. And if your leader's going to be out of town for a weekend or even just getting off for the evening, it would be nice if you could cycle that around a bit more easily. So instead of it being 12 hours, you could just choose who to pass it to. Right now, it just drops to the officer with the highest power. So if it was dropped here, it would go to the 30K right here to BSA. So it'd be nice. So if you want to choose who it goes to, let's say I was getting it here, we'd have to go through and kick every person that has more power than I do, or depending on where you are, if you're the lowest, you kick every other officer to make sure it goes to the one that you want it to go to. So it's pretty involved when you should just be able to click and say, I want to appoint this person as leadership, and they get appointed leadership. I don't know why the 12-hour thing has to be a deal with this being a very global game. People around the world, it'd be nice to have some flexibility with how you can manage in your groups. Something else in the Kingdom Ring section, you have these rings of power and you can use one ability at a time, which I think is good. But right now, once you use a ring, they're all on cooldown for a pretty significant period of time. I personally think that instead of only being able to use one and then having a total ring cooldown, I think each different ability should have cooldown. And while you could only still use one at the same time, you can't pop them all at the same time. Once the benefits from whatever your ability is ends, assuming it's not on cooldown, you should be able to use a different one. And I would even personally prefer that each of these things, instead of having a 48-hour cooldown total, if it was 72 hours per one, but then you could use them after the effects expire. So you can be a little bit more creative with how you want to use them, when you want to use them, instead of it being 48 hours and that's it. It'd be nice to have some variety in how you can use these with just different cooldown timers on each of them. Still use one at a time though, I think, so it doesn't get ridiculous. But I think that'd be very, very beneficial. One last point on kingdoms, or even this could go for United factions as well. I don't know why United factions and kingdom like allied tiles are purple. This is the same as if they were just in the same faction. You could have absolutely no relation with you. They could actually be working against your group in a different fellowship or warband in your faction, and they would still be purple. To me, if you take the extra step to get in a United faction or some kind of alliance or kingdom or whatever you want to call it, you should be able to work together with those groups. You can stack on tiles, you can guard on their tiles. You're not constantly bouncing each other because you're taking tiles they were going to take. It just doesn't make sense to me as to why they're not just all blue. Even if you want them to be a different color, just to differentiate what your group is. Like, again, if your different kingdom groups could possibly, you know, if they could be different colors to differentiate, that'd be fine. But allow us to guard on those tiles still or stack on them. I don't see how that would really be an issue. And it would allow more cohesion within groups. Because again, it seems like the goal here is to bring groups together and have people playing together up to 500 people. Really, really cool stuff. But they still make it the exact same as just fighting along someone that's in your faction. You could both not even be in a fellowship and just be neighbors in a faction. You're like, oh, you're purple, I can connect to you, but I can't do anything else. So I don't know why that's the way it is, but I definitely think the tile situation needs addressed. A few more points and then we're gonna wrap it up. These are not necessarily season 6 specific like the other ones were, but number 1 is going to be the 24-hour buff at the beginning of the season. I think it would be very, very interesting if you could choose when that buff starts within about a 12-hour window. So hear me out. Number 1, if you're playing as a leader or an officer, there is a little bit more you're doing outside of just straight tile taking play in the game. So sometimes that can take time. You're letting people in the group. If you're coordinated a lot of big groups, use Discord. There's a lot of stuff going on. So trying to do your 24 hours while the game is starting, it's a little bit difficult. And if you are, it's kind of reality, but it'd be nice if it was addressed. But even more so than that, I think something that everyone could agree on is, being a global game, sometimes these things start at bad times. Every season we've gone to recently has started at 3 a.m. for me, 4 a.m. for a lot of other people in our group. So you should be able to join a server, make sure you have a spot so it doesn't fill up, but then you can wait up to maybe 12 hours to activate your 24-hour buff. So I could join in, I could get my spot. Okay, I'm in, no big deal. And then I'm going to log in 6 hours, which I get some sleep. So it's not as miserable to play through that first 24 hours. I think it'd be very, very nice. You could get the most or more out of your buff without really wrecking your sleep schedule. Let's be real. I play 24 hours straight, so I kind of wreck it either way. But it'd be nice if there was some flexibility in that. Obviously, the con here would be if you start as, you know, up to 12 hours late, there could be less tiles around you. So maybe you have to weigh that and decide if it's something you want to do. But I think that's a choice people can make, because you might be just not able to play. You might be at work. You might have something really serious going on. And so at least give them a chance to have that buff and catch up a little bit. I think that'd be very, very nice. And one last thing, it's kind of a 2-point deal. I've talked about this actually, I think, in a few videos. I do these kind of quality of life videos every couple of months here. I think you absolutely need to be able to click on a skill. If I reset my points here, just for this example, and you should be able to click, there should be 2 buttons. There should be put 1 point, max out. Because especially as you play, you have higher respect commanders, you level them up, you mock battle for the first time, they go to level 30 or something, and you got all these points. And to sit here and click through, I know it seems minor, but if you've played a lot, you get it where you're like, all right, I gotta go click over here. Still allow us to do it one at a time, because there are times you want to really choose where you go. But if I know I want to max out this title, let me just click max and max out that title, max out that one, and so on and so forth. I think that would be very, very nice. I also think in terms of the maxing out, I don't think resetting should necessarily cost points. I think it really penalizes players for getting creative or trying different builds or doing different things. And we're stepping from point to point here, so hang with me. But whether or not they keep the 20 gems, I think is less important to me. But I do think it's a bit ridiculous, especially in Bag End. It should not cost gems to reset skills in Bag End, because that's where you test people in Red Book. It's ridiculous. So the 20 gems for resetting skills, to me, it does not make sense, because they have added an ability called Clairvoyance, which allows you to check and see marches on the map. So if you are using Clairvoyance, in theory, you want to choose which commanders to send. You could possibly choose which gear to put on, and you could choose what skills to have on your commanders. And to me, it has a cost associated with it. It's 2 ability points, so I think that's a fair payout to say you use ability points, but then you shouldn't be charged gems to restat. If I'm using my Gandalf the Grey, for example, and I know that I'm going to go up against, I think, oh, blue stack's catching up there. If I'm using my Gandalf the Grey, for example, and I use Clairvoyance, and I know I'm coming up against someone that has fire damage, they got Alchemist, I might want to go into High Alert instead of something else that I have going on. So simple things like that. And again, stepping even a point further from this, for the very, very last point, is the ability to hide your marches. Because let's be real, no matter what season you're playing in, people put alt accounts into fellowships or factions or whatever it is so they can see incoming marches and basically bypass the Clairvoyance ability. We added the Clairvoyance ability so everyone has the same playing field, and you use ability points if you want to do that. It has a cost, so I think that's fair to be able to choose how you want to use that. However, people put accounts in fellowships or factions to see incoming marches and react accordingly. I think there needs to be a setting, so I can click here in the settings, I can go to it, and I can click enable or disable my marches, the viewability or whatever of my marches within my fellowship or faction. So if you really want to be just make sure nothing happens and you're getting the most fair fights possible, you can just turn it off. I think the upside of seeing your faction's marches or your fellowship's marches, like who the commander is, again, I could look here and see who we got going by here. So Top Cat's going by with the Gandalf the Grey. The upside here of seeing Gandalf the Grey, to me, does not outweigh the downside of my enemies seeing who is coming at them, because we had it happen already. There's 500 people that are in our kingdom. There's going to be spy accounts. We had it happen where it was like multiple hits in a row where the exact right gear piece was being moved to counter, you know, fire resistance, pursuit, that kind of stuff. It just, without any misses, it just confirms it's happening. So just allow us to disable that feature. I think that would completely solve the problem. It would get people, you know, I think it adds value to Clairvoyance as an ability if you want to use that, and maybe let it be something you can enable if people want to possibly show that to their fellowship or their faction, however it is. Or again, if you're in a non-kingdom season, maybe just enable it for your fellowship or just the 100 people you're with and not your entire faction. I think anything along those lines would solve that problem and make PvP a lot more fun when it's actually a fair fight. But again, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down below what you think, if you think these ideas should be implemented, if they should not be, and if you have any additional ideas that you think should be included in part 2 of this video, let me know. And as always, we'll see everyone in a future video.